Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of A Mic on the Podium with me, Michael Seal. Before we start, I want to mention the 3 ways you can support the podcast. Firstly, you can leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts. The more ratings and reviews the show gets, helps it reach a bigger audience and gain in popularity. If you would like to help the show monetarily, you can go to justgiving.com, search for A Mic on the Podium, and make a donation there. Alternatively, you can go to patreon.com/A Mic on the Podium and subscribe monthly to hear 2 new series of episodes, a monthly bulletin, and much more. That's patreon.com/A Mic on the Podium. Today, I talked to a Venezuelan conductor who can count Daniel Barenboim as being one of his mentors. His career has been truly global, having conducted in many of the world's leading opera houses, and soon he starts a new job here in the UK when he becomes chief conductor of the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra in 2021. It is a real pleasure to welcome Domingo Hindoyan. Domingo, how lovely to talk to you today.
Hi, Michael. It's nice to meet you.
I wonder if I could start right back at the beginning, because your early life was spent in Venezuela, in Caracas. I wonder how music first came into your life.
Well, I come from a musical family. My father, he's a violin player, retired already. And his uncle also was a violin player. My grandfather was a musician, amateur, but a music lover. So it comes a little bit from my father's side. And I just started very early. I mean, I can even say I don't remember. I was probably 5 years old and I have a violin in my hands. And being already just knowing to play a few notes in the first position with some marks in the violin so I find the notes, I was already playing in an orchestra. I started very early, like with barely some technique. So I was already in the swimming pool swimming. I didn't no time for.
Yes. At what point, or if at all, did the famous Venezuelan system El Sistema come into your life? Were you part of that at all, or were you just, because you came from a musical background, learning separate of that?
Exactly. Well, this is an interesting question. It was a little bit mixed, but when I first started, I was 5 years old, was in the Simón Bolívar Conservatory, which is was the center of the education and the learning process of El Sistema in Caracas. And I started there, and I was 5 years old, 6 years old. I had some pictures somewhere, and I was already in an orchestra that belonged to El Sistema. Then later on, I also made some studies in all the music schools in Caracas that did not belong to El Sistema, but let's say mainly my path was through El Sistema. For instance, the violin, the most important part of my violin in Venezuela was in the Latin American Academy, Violin Academy, which is part of the El Sistema. And of course, I was member of plenty of various youth orchestras, and later on, before coming to Europe, in the Simón Bolívar Symphony Orchestra, which it was not a youth orchestra when I started there.
Yeah, it changed, didn't it, from a youth orchestra to symphony orchestra?
Well, yes, there are 2 orchestras. I mean, there is Simón Bolívar, the one I joined when I was 17. I was the youngest. And there, the youth orchestra of Venezuela became also Simón Bolívar, and we kind of, for a while, we had like Simón Bolívar A and B without any quality classification, just A and B. I mean, A were the older and B were the one Gustavo conducted a little bit on tour and the famous concert at France, and this one I did not belong to that one. I was to the older Simón Bolívar, the A. Although most of my friends are also in that one, the one we're touring around the world.
And was that training, I mean, in whichever of the 2 orchestras that they have, was that training orchestrally something that you think you rely on to this day as a conductor? because these orchestras seem to be incredibly well trained, incredibly well drilled, and all the way up to Dudamel conducting. A good roster of conductors. Do you think that really helped you going forwards to becoming a conductor?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the first is the routine we had in the good sense of the word routine. I used to finish the school at midday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and immediately only 1 hour for lunch, and immediately going to the music center, whatever was that day. Mm-hmm. And I used to have every afternoon music from 1 or 2 o'clock till 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and this, then you grow up with your friends, and this famous connection the orchestra had, and the Venezuelan orchestra have, it comes already just for spending hours with the same people, playing string quartet, playing chamber music, and the conductors, including Gustavo, including other conductors, they were just part of the orchestra itself. Yes. So it was just a family. So that's what built this connection. And of course, how lucky I was to do so much repertoire. When I was 20 and I came to continue to my studies in Europe, I have played all Brahms symphonies, all Beethoven symphonies, all Mahler, most of the Shostakovich, just to mention, of course, Tchaikovsky, all of them, just to mention a few. And this is, it's a lot when you're 20 years. And in my case, and in the case of all of us there was also a big individual development. The violin was on my own. The etude, the technique, the concertos I really worked a lot on that. Yeah. And I actually used to play even soloists before coming to Europe, a few concertos there.
Well, just the list of repertoire you've just read out or listed of music that you had already played and encountered before you came to Europe is a staggering amount for somebody so young. They're the sort of things that you're well into a career as an orchestral musician before you can tick off playing all of the Mahlers, all of the Beethovens, all of the Brahmses. I think I was probably a good 10 years into my playing career before I got anywhere near ticking those off. And, I played for 22 years and I still didn't play all of the Shostakovich symphonies. What an amazing background. When did you leave and where did you go in Europe to carry on studying? And when you were studying, were you studying violin and conducting, or did you leave to just go and study conducting?
No, actually, I left to study only violin at the beginning. Yeah. In Venezuela, we had often master classes from international teachers, and maestros used to come from America, from UK, from France, and once I met this violin teacher called Habib Kayale. Very special and personality and deep knowledge of the violin technique, and he has an international academy in Switzerland, close to the Geneva Lake, and kind of this idyllic place and place that. And I met him. He went to Venezuela twice, and I played for him, and it was fantastic chemistry. And I decided to, of course, I found a scholarship. I could not afford myself to pay studies in Switzerland. And I found scholarship, and I left to study violin with him, where I just, kind of a place where I used to study 8 hours a day violin and think about life and music and philosophy and dreams and ambitions but everything was canalized in the energy through the violin.
Yes.
But I always had this curiosity about conducting. Being the son of a violin player who was an assistant concertmaster in Venezuelan Symphony Orchestra, my father, I used to attend a concert every week since I was 5, 6. And of course, for a kid, Michael, the big mystery is what these conductors do,
Yeah.
And I was, of course, hypnotized by that. And with time and being an orchestra player, I always look at the conductor in a different way. Why is he doing this? What is right? This one I don't like. And this, that. why he's, I start to think as a conductor and go to the rehearsals with the score and with this curiosity or dreaming about the conductor coming late and myself conducting a little bit, so these things starting to fit in my mind. And but it happened once I was 15 and the conductor of the youth orchestra gave me the baton. I was the concertmaster. Come and conduct a little bit. I remember a Bergin suite and some of the Bartok dances, and it was really a sensation, extraordinary. But then I left it. But it was always on my system. I wanted really to learn conductor at some point, but I believe I need to go as far as possible with my talent with violin in order after to have something to give as a conductor.
Yes. Yeah, so many conductors previously in the podcast have said that they either did what you did, which is studied for as long as possible to get as good as possible on an instrument, or feel that is something that a conductor has to do before becoming a good conductor, is be proficient in your instrument. I think personally, I think it's true. If you've spent those hours learning to be a great violinist, learning the ins and outs of string playing, it really does help when you come to conduct. So it sounds very similar to me in the fact that, I'd often have those dreams. I wonder what happened if the conductor fell ill and who would take over and all of that sort of thing.
Exactly.
It did actually happen to me, but by then I was already conducting. But it's funny that, I never had those dreams about violin soloists, though. Did you? I never thought, I could stand up there and play the Shostakovich if they fell ill. I never had those dreams.
No, that I didn't have.
And so what point in your studies in Switzerland did you start to think more seriously about conducting? And did you have a teacher, or did you join a class at some point?
Well, while I was living this crazy dream of studying violin every day in a small house close to the Geneva Lake, I was always in my head with the conductor ambition of becoming a conductor. So by profit, I was in Switzerland and I made some research. I traveled a little bit. I went to London at first just to attend and to the brochure and the Royal Academy and the Royal College. And I went to some concerts and I met some people. And then I went to Paris. And I did little trips like this to see where I will find myself good to study conducting and where can I afford it.
Yes, of course.
London was immediately excluded. London was excluded because it's a different price for non-European students, and I could not afford it. But then I finished, and then I through friends I discovered there was a fantastic teacher in Geneva.
Yes.
And I went to audition in Geneva Conservatory, and not far because my music school, my violin school academy was in Canton de Vaud, close to Lausanne. Then I went to Geneva, which is for Swiss distance, it's a long trip. And then I went to Geneva, and I auditioned, I auditioned, and everything from there went very well. It's his name is Laurent Gay. He's a French conductor who really is a fantastic teacher. In all sense, he respects the proposals of the student, but he knows how to guide, to take the better of it. And from there, I study everything. I study also choir conducting with the chorus master there. Piano, of course, to improve the piano skills and the sight reading and the piano and everything, and the orchestration and composition, everything possible at the European style and European way of learning conducting. And this was very, very, very important for me. Very important for me because, and also was lucky, I could always travel to Venezuela and conduct any youth orchestra while I was in holidays.
Yes.
Then, because of course in Geneva, I would have small orchestra. to conduct. I could not. But I would go to Venezuela, conduct Tchaikovsky symphony, something I couldn't do in the conservatory. I couldn't do in the conservatory. So I used to share all that. And with time, maybe I'm too fast. You can tell me if I'm telling you too much at the same time.
No.
Then some master classes. Then I met people like that were very important at the beginning, like Bernard Haitink, for instance. I auditioned for this Lucerne master class he used to do, and I was accepted, and I was active, and I conducted in front of him. I was about chemistry, and he taught me many things. I attended also Jesus Lopez Cobos, or even Colin Matter, that you for sure you know. But this I was passive, only listening. I went to a town in Germany where he had some students, and I just pay the passive on in subscription, and then I just listen to the whole week of lessons, and all like this. I try to get rich as possible in knowledge from everywhere to build myself.
And I think you bring an interesting point here for listeners who aren't conductors, or maybe even musicians who've never gone into conducting, is that there are lots and lots of courses or weeks that happen during a year normally, obviously not at the moment, but where you have a choice of being an active participant, which means you actually get to conduct and podium time and lessons with the maestro, whoever it might be, or you can be passive, which means you can go and attend all of the sessions, video sessions, conducting sessions. You won't actually conduct. Both are very good. I mean, obviously the passive costs less, but you learn, I would imagine, almost as much, because you're seeing maybe 6 active participants being taught. You get to hear what's being said. You get to understand, score sessions, and I think it's a very good way, if funds are tight, for you to still learn. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And a conductor is such a rich job that you can learn from everything and from everyone, the good things and the bad things. For instance, also with the violin, I was still active,
yes.
And I used to play in many orchestras. One of those, some youth orchestras, I went to Japan, for instance, at the Pacific Music Festival, where at the first year, Bernard Haitink was the conductor with Mahler 9. And then Fabio Luisi with the Mahler 6, and then Gergiev with Shostakovich 11. So these things, of course, a young musician who wants to be a conductor, it marks your life, because you know how they rehearse, or how they don't rehearse, or
yeah.
or how they build, and then of course I was always with my score, and living in my mind, the conductor's life, even I was a violin player, and from all that I learned a lot.
I want to go back one step briefly, because Laurent Gay is not a teacher's name that's come up before. In the past, we've learned on the podcast that if you were a Hans Swarovski student in Vienna, you probably got to talk about technique, i.e. stick technique, for about an hour in over a 3-year period. But if you were a Musin student, everything was about stick technique. What was Laurent Gay like in that regard? Was he more 50-50? Did he have a definite school of conducting, a technical way of conducting, or was he more of the Swarovski, let's talk about the music and the architecture and the structure?
Was 50-50, to be honest. Was 50-50, and this was very good.
Yes,
was very good. The first thing that was very strange for me, it was that I should conduct. I don't know how to translate it in English. I should conduct in silence.
Okay.
And I would put the score in front of me, and he will be reading his score, and he will conduct a symphony, and with no piano, an orchestra in front of me, and nobody singing.
Yes.
And only with that, he would know exactly how much the score.
Yes.
Because of course you don't have a sound support to if you don't know this chord, you can follow a pianist, you can dump. No, then you really need to anticipate everything with the eyes, and you have to kind of make this movie that you have somebody in front of you.
Yeah.
But the gesture, he will read it perfectly, and he will say, "You forgot the second clarinet, or you forgot." I say, but it's not important one. Yeah, but you have to think about it, and he will immediately read it in your gesture and in your mind. And this was fascinating. And of course, this was in preparation to conduct the real ensemble after. But this one was very important, of course, the technique, but he will not impose a specific, for instance, way of holding the baton, or a way of he will try to find in your body what you could do the best in order to express what you want.
Well, that sounds like a very interesting school, and I think personally I'd probably prefer that than the old-fashioned way of two pianos, which, you know, you're often dealing with the two pianists rather than thinking about the score orchestrally, and that's bad. That's wrong. You know, as Simon Rattle says, learning to conduct with two pianos is great if you're going to conduct two pianos. He's completely right in that regard. So doing it that way, you've got to have a sound picture in your head of what you want the score to sound like, what you expect it to sound like.
Exactly, and because you develop the inner ear, you develop it in a way. Also, as because we were 5 students. Then what is interesting also is when you are not conducting and you are following, and this room class is the classroom is totally silent, and somebody is conducting, and sometimes you feel the breathing of your colleagues next to you. Everyone's breathing together, you know, and it's actually quite magic. And it's very interesting because it develops very much the ear and the imagination.
So having absorbed all of that from Laurent Gay, you as you said, you mentioned Haitink, Lopez Cobos. I've also read, you know, experiences with Esa Becker-Salonen, Sir Andrew Davis, David Zinman. Were they sort of giving you extra things on top of the technique you were already getting in Geneva? It must have been quite daunting to stand in front of conductors of that stature in masterclasses.
Yeah, I mean, some of them is about. It was more about the huge and amazing charisma and aura they will have, and they will show you something, and then you will say, "How did he did it?" You know, and of course, all of them, especially Mr. Haitink or Lopez Cobos, and all of them actually, also David Zinman, is about conducting less to achieve more.
Yes.
And the 3 of them, they are great examples of that. In my case, Lopez Cobos is very interesting because he was very tall conductor. I'm a tall guy, and I could see on him how he will just move a little bit. And you have to be careful with that because you are tall. If you move a little bit, your little bit, it's much more from a little bit of another conductor who is probably a few centimeters less than you. But you have to be careful with your arms and move less. And this is a common thing, but especially the eyes and how they deal. But I always found it a little bit cruel, these master classes, when all these young conductors were working so hard, and then the maestro comes and he barely moves, and the orchestra plays like God, and they play so beautifully. And it's always interesting.
But they're bound to, aren't they? Because all of a sudden it's gone from a student to Bernard Haitink. The orchestra's going to raise its game anyway, so that they're on a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Very rarely do you see these great maestros demonstrating and it all falls apart. That just doesn't happen. Another big name, I'm interested to know how much contact you had with him, but your first job was assistant at the Deutsche Staatsoper Berlin for 3 years with Daniel Barenboim. Were you assistant to the Staatsoper, or were you assistant to Daniel Barenboim?
Well, this is another subject. Actually, this is maybe where the period of my life where I learned the most.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything started as, of course, again, like a violin player. In 2005, Mr. Barenboim was conducting Chicago Symphony at the Lucerne Festival. It was, I remember perfectly, Ravel's repertoire was Rhapsody Espagnol, Bolero, and Alborada, and a kind of a Ravel second half.
Yeah.
And I live in Switzerland, so I just decided to go to the rehearsal because I was a little bit afraid I could not come in with security. I took my violin with me. You know, I will make kind of a face. I'm a Chicago Symphony player. I was just going. and I got in, and I was in the audience. And I recognized a friend of mine playing horn at Chicago Symphony. Yes. One of the horn players of a youth orchestra was before in Japan. And he said, come with me at the end of the rehearsal. I will introduce you to Maestro Barenboim. I said, no, you're really not a little bit afraid. Wow. But at the end, I did. I was with my violin. And he said, but where are you from? And I'm Venezuelan. But your family name, where does it come from? And I said, well, this family name is an Armenian, Syria. My mother was born in Syria, in Aleppo, from an Armenian father. And she after immigrated to Venezuela and said, wow, so you have some Syrian background. Yeah, well, yes, of course, Syrian Armenian for sure. You know what my project, he said, the Israeli, Palestinian, Arab project I have, of course, yes. By chance. I said, of course, Maestro, I know that project. Would you like to play in that orchestra? I said, well, with pleasure, of course. But I see you have a violin, but you really play good violin. Maestro, I cannot tell if I play good or not. I have to audition. I will not tell you I play good. I have to audition. Yeah. When you want, I organize, I come to Berlin. No, Berlin. Just play now something.
Wow.
And I was lucky. I was in shape, you know. And then I took my violin. I played the Tchaikovsky concerto on the cadenza, and he was a little bit conducting, you know, holding the orchestra in his mind. And after that, next day he called me to the orchestra, and then everything started there. Since 2006, I joined the West Eastern Divan Orchestra until 2012.
Yeah. Wow.
And my conducting developed in the parallel in the conservatory in Geneva and with master classes. And then at some point I told him, you know, Maestro, I'm also a conductor. Oh, he said, another one, you know, another one. So many, you know, with his humor, fantastic. And there's another one. But slowly, once, just to tell you the story, he did a master class with few conductors that played in the orchestra. We were three at the moment. Mina Secret, he lives in Chicago. He's a conductor in one of the Chicago orchestras. Daniel Cohen and myself. And the three of us, we conduct a symphony. I conduct the Eroica. And I conduct the seventh Beethoven 7, and he liked it very much. Until then, it's there where he knew I was a conductor and I was really serious about it. And then he used to give me the orchestra all the time for sound check and so on. And later on, he proposed me the job at the Deutsche Staatsoper, Berlin Staatsoper unter den Linden. But he told me you have to come and audition in front of the orchestra. And everything there started there. I came to Berlin and auditioned. And I was here for 3 years. Yeah. 2013 to 2016. Yeah.
Wow, what a story. If you hadn't have had the guts to blag your way into that rehearsal and pretend that you were a violinist, one wonders what would have happened. What a wonderful story.
Exactly. These small details.
And did he see you conduct very often? Because that's the problem with being an assistant, is that a lot of the time you're helping the boss out, Maestro Barenboim out by sitting in the audience or helping him with balance or whatever it might be. But how often did he see you conduct, and other than, when you did the Beethoven 7th, and what input did he have into your style or into the way that you conduct?
Everything, Michael. It's from the beginning he told me, you are not going to be an assistant in the professional term, in the professional meaning of it. Yeah. You, of course, you have the job of assistant, but you will be kind of my conducting academy.
Yes.
So you will be. So I have a job of an assistant with a contract saying that I should assist him in some opera during the season, but actually was in every single rehearsal, from every repertoire. And he used to give me the orchestra. Already 2 weeks after I started, he gave me orchestra with Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto to accompany Radu Lupu. And then, of course, immediately after, we will eat together and he will give me the input.
Yes.
Was very bad, was very good, and or do like this, or you have to study a little bit more, or you were not prepared for this, or this was fantastic. Or he will always, but always very demanding. Always, absolutely very demanding. And he's not the kind of conductor that will cancel. He doesn't cancel, and then the assistant will jump in. This happens very, very, very rare.
Yeah.
And but I was there. He told me, Domingo, don't accept this job if you don't like opera. You know, it's enough already with symphonic. You have so many great things and rich. Come only here if you really like the theater, drama, staging, and the voices. And then you will really have fun. Otherwise, stay in the symphonic only. You come whenever you want to watch rehearsals and we can talk about music. No, of course I like it. So then I was there every day to meet great stage directors and great singers and growing. And of course, with him, he was extremely, and still today, extremely generous with me, with sharing his knowledge. Of course, you have always to provoke him and ask questions and be, you know, he likes this challenge of somebody who knows and always curious, especially curiosity. And then you can have a fantastic relationship that I have since many years already.
Wow, brilliant. That's amazing. My next question is actually going into opera and the fact that I've noticed that you've guest conducted at the Met and at Stuttgart and Monte Carlo. When you guest conducted, were they? I know that some opera houses, you know, you can go in and conduct one performance of La Bohème because it's in their repertoire. Or were you involved from the beginning with directors and putting a new production together? How long did you spend in those opera houses?
Well, it depends of the house and the style. I did a little bit of everything. I have conducted new productions in Austria, for instance, and the Graz Opera, where I really spent time with the stage director doing the premiere of Hansel and Gretel, for instance, or Turandot. And then really, you know, to develop this relationship, stage director, conductor, and singers, and the orchestra, which is fantastic. I also did performances just without any rehearsal, without anything, where I stood up in front of the Dresden Semperoper, and I did Traviata, and I just say, hello, good evening to the orchestra, first time in my life in frac. And the Metropolitan is in between. Even if it's repertoire, there is always rehearsal, because it's not a repertoire like the German style, German Austrian style. I had at the Metropolitan, I have 3 proper weeks of rehearsal with the singers and with the orchestra, 1 reading or 2 readings, and then Italiana with the singers, and then stage, and then general dress rehearsal. So I have like 4 rehearsals, and of course for orchestra like that one, which is amazing. And Elisir d'Amore is more than enough. But Vienna Staatsoper, when I conduct Turandot, only 1 rehearsal for Turandot.
So I mean, you know, a real mixture. And the ones that interest me and frighten me would be the going in and just doing it straight away with no rehearsal. That must be, especially because, you know, if you've never conducted an orchestra before and you go in there and the first thing you do is a concert, you don't know how they're going to respond to your first downbeat or your upbeat. That must be quite an adrenaline rush.
Absolutely. I've done it with, for instance, with Traviata and Bohème, I did it. And with Tosca also I did it. But I feel say, for instance, Tosca was here at the Staatsoper Berlin, but I was the assistant.
Yes.
And I prepared the singers, I prepared the piano with the piano. I never conducted the orchestra.
Yeah.
Barenboim told me, I'll give you one rehearsal. But in that rehearsal, the tenor got sick. And everyone knew the opera, and I didn't want to rehearse just for me, you know. This is the typical moment where everybody knows everything, and they will say, "Well, why we rehearse?"
Yes.
And then everyone will feel it's only for the conductor. So I used to say to Barenboim, "Maestro, let's cancel the rehearsal. Doesn't matter. I'll go direct."
Yeah.
Then I left. My wife gave birth of her son. And then I came back and I went directly to Tosca. And of course, I was so adrenaline, but I knew it inside, everything. Because I built it with him in this. Different was Aida, that I conducted without any rehearsal at the Royal Swedish Opera in Stockholm. And there was my first Aida in my life.
Wow.
And this was a little crazy. But I prepared very well, and I went to some rehearsals. I remember it was Julia Jones conducting, and I went to her rehearsals. And then one day of rehearsals, and then I left, and I came back. But the sensation, I have to admit, Aida, it's kind of straightforward opera. It's like a big, it's less difficult than Rigoletto or Traviata or this. And then I felt after 5-10 minutes, I said, okay, it's under my control. I can, and then I immediately could feel free and do music with orchestra, which I have a nice relationship with them, and they're so free and flexible. So this kind of experience, but this, Michael, it shows how important is the technique. Because they're expecting from you to really show them everything without meeting you before in rehearsal. So this is
yeah, you can't say anything. You've got to say it all with your body, with your beat, with your eyes, with your face. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be technically correct and on the game. In the game, should I say? On the game means something completely different. 2019 is a big year for you. You become principal guest of the Polish National Radio Symphony Orchestra, but it's also the first time you meet the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. And not so long ago, it was announced that you were going to start as their chief conductor in 2021-22. What was that like, meeting that orchestra? I've met them, I've conducted them almost 100 times in various different concerts. And education and schools and family and Christmas and whatever else. What was it like meeting the RLPA for the first time?
Well, you know them. So I have conducted many of the British orchestras, especially in London, with little rehearsal time. And then when I went to Liverpool, I had some rehearsal time, and I thought before, well, English, they're very fast. I will end up canceling rehearsals probably. But I started to work was Beethoven 7, and I felt this ambition of rehearsing more, of playing better and every detail, and this will to really go deep in the music and not just let's finish the rehearsal and tomorrow anyways Beethoven 7 we know it. No, was actually completely new piece, like it's a new piece and was fantastic. We felt the first feeling. I remember I called my wife after, said, "Oh, what a nice orchestra!" and I went to the hotel, not so far. I was not in front at the time. I was a little bit further, but it was fantastic feeling.
They're a great orchestra. Vasily Petrenko has appeared on the podcast, and he said it's their curiosity and their striving for higher and higher levels of performance that he loves and loved when he first met them, and it sounds like you had a very similar experience. And yeah, they are a great orchestra that do want to give their best and are curious. And so you're looking forward to starting with them in 2021. And are you already talking about programs and plans and tours, or has COVID sort of stopped that for now?
No, not at all, not at all. The COVID didn't stop that planning. We are planning a lot, and I'm trying to organize my ideas because I have too many at the same time, and I only have 12 weeks. I have only, but putting things together and trying to give a line and a coherence in the repertoire, and it's passionate. It's something fantastic about the job, and the right soloist and the touring and all these kind of things is give me so much pleasure to plan. But about Liverpool, there is much more than only the orchestra. It's all the surrounding, because it's in some kind. I felt like home, because there is the Youth Philharmonic, there is the In Harmony project, there is the Ensemble 1010. Probably I will forget somebody, but it's amazing. I can do so many things, and I can be part of so many great activities at the same time, and the educational part of it so important, and in Liverpool. And I think I grew up like that way. I grew up that way. So I felt very much, even if it's in Liverpool, so far from my country, I felt somehow identified and close to what they have there. And I'm very much looking forward. I hope all this strange period where we're going through could end and finish soon, and we can, Vasily could end his last season properly and do the repertoire he really wanted to do the last season, at least from January on. And let's hope we can also start 21-22 in great shape.
Brilliant. I've got one more question before we do the 10 questions, and it's a question I've asked every conductor pretty much. When you come to learn a new score, do you have a system? Do you sit at the piano, or do you use a violin? Do you start at the beginning and work your way through? And when doing that, are you somebody who writes in their scores, or do you try to keep your scores clean and tidy?
No, well, yes. I studied first a little bit empty, just reading my score with my inner ear. I go to the piano. I'm not a great pianist, but I go to the piano for the harmony and for some harmony questions I would have, and some transitions. I use my violin for some specific bowings I want to use. I look for some reference recordings I might exist to their great ideas, or great, that will write questions on myself.
Yes.
And two things about the writing on the score. I have two scores,
right.
almost always for especially for the big pieces. I will conduct all my life. There is one score that I write, everything goes through my mind. And all the problems, all the doubts, and all the solutions, and I erase them, and I start again, and analysis, and the harmony, and the structures, and all this. And then have another one where I conduct with it, because so I already know the piece. If I conduct with the score, then I put a clean score in front of me.
Yes.
But with time, I have to admit, I write less and less, because kind of my eye gets a little bit faster in identifying things, and sometimes I think writing something there is just redundant. Will just bother. Why I should put the forte in blue or in red if it's already forte? I can see it is forte. It's only maybe a forte which is maybe surprising, or I forget, or it's unexpected. Maybe that one I would put something. But I'm just starting to write less and less and less. But we'll see. Maybe now after the virus, I will have to write again a lot.
Yeah, well, it's true. Also, you're going to have a lot more repertoire to learn. So maybe two scores, it might be quite tricky to keep that going. And also shelf space. If you have two scores for every piece, that's a lot of space for shelves.
Well, that's the question. Sometimes I just have my own score where I write everything. And if I'm conducting opera at some point somewhere else, sometimes I just travel without score and I ask the librarian of the orchestra. Of course, should be the same edition at least.
Yes.
But you have, the same edition. Yes, then I just pick up the score of the orchestra and I travel without anything.
Domingo, it's 10 questions time. And as ever, I'll start with what sound or noise do you love and what sound or noise do you hate?
Well, the sound I love is one I miss very much. It's the little singing of the crickets in Caracas, in the Caracas night. It's so beautiful and it's really special because it's not so strong like could be in Provence, in France or in Italy. It's a little bit softer and higher, and it's a little bit nostalgic. I love it. And the one I hate the most, there are many, but let's say this repetitive sound in a calm place. Where there is a mistake, something wrong happening with a wall or with the heating. These old heatings in Europe, a heating system that have sometimes water drops coming that you can't stop them. You have to call the technician and plug,
yes.
Plug, and you're sleeping. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up because of that or something in the wall in between the tubes. This I even hate it more than the strong and loud drilling.
yeah. When a central heating system is dripping through the night, that can be annoying, like a tap in a sink. Yeah, it can be very, very annoying. Next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had 24 hours free, what would you spend it doing?
Well, I would profit as much as possible with my kids, and probably would be that I discovered recently to be in a boat in the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean Sea or in any calm sea with these beautiful blue waters, so that it's this feeling of freedom and the sun and with nice food and good drinks and swimming. This I will spend it that way.
Well, if you don't mind,
Not that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you mind if I join you? That sounds lovely.
Well, I was going to say with my kids, with my family and friends. Also, friends is the one. I'm very absolutely.
Well, another reason for asking, can I join you? Because for those who are listening to the podcast, we recorded this in August 2020, and today is one of the hottest days of the year. And the thought of jumping into the sea right now is pure bliss.
Absolutely. Also for me now.
Who would be a favorite conductor of yesteryear?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question, very difficult to answer because it depends on in my case, depends on the repertoire and because depends how old. Some of them I didn't meet them. I could not attend concerts. So I could not the personalities. I really don't know as a person, but musically speaking, for instance, depends. When it's about Italian opera, I love Victor de Sabata, Tullio Serafin, Davazzeni. I love these recordings. When it's about Mahler, I just recently could not stop to Bruno Walter's Mahler's Five, and or somebody just years I met and I work with and I love in all the aspects was Claudio Abbado. I was lucky to work with him for 1 month in Venezuela when he used to visit us there in 2010. And I was his assistant, and I really enjoyed very much working with him and his recording and the way and the passion for music, how much he studied and he respected the score and the music was really fantastic.
And who would be a favorite current conductor?
I admire many of my colleagues, and depending on the piece,
Yes.
Schumann Symphony, all of a sudden I found a recording and very interesting, and then I go and you know, or Mahler or whatever. It depends of the piece exactly.
Mm.
But I think for obvious reasons, what we spoke before, a current conductor that influenced my life very much will be Daniel Barenboim, without no doubt, absolutely. But in the younger generation, I have so many I like so much. Let me mention a few just for you know to for instance, a great friend of mine, Gustavo Dudamel. Yannick Nézet-Séguin, I love what he does. Who else? Pavo is fantastic. Just to give you one favorite, I can't.
What is the hardest work you have ever conducted?
Yeah, I was conducting it exactly when the virus started, and we stopped one day before the dress rehearsal. And it was the Schoenberg Variations, Opus 31. And I think it's a very, very difficult piece because depends. There is the technical pieces where, you know, there is all these bar changes and numbers, and this with study, this works always, this is no problem. But the Schoenberg Variations, I found it hard because it's hard to make it understand to the orchestra. Already for the conductor itself, despite the addition helps you to find the Hauptstimme and the Nebenstimme and all this, it's anyway difficult to balance. And it has such a lyricism behind also, that it's not just, you know, serialism and there is this romantic content behind that is very important to take, but you cannot bring it out if the orchestra doesn't like the piece. So
that's true.
So it's very difficult how you rehearse the piece so that the orchestra understand it, feel in love with it, and at the end comes something else. I remember the first day of rehearsal, the first violist told me, "Maestro, I hate this piece." And I told him, "Wait.
Yeah.
Until Thursday, and on Thursday I will ask you again." And on Thursday morning I asked him, "Do you really think the same?" "No. It's actually a fantastic piece." And then I was happy. Then I said, "Okay, doesn't matter. We don't have the concert tomorrow. I achieved something now this week."
Well, you've changed somebody's life. There we go.
Yeah, it's fantastic. This is a very difficult piece. Of course, after I can mention a few that are difficult technically and you know, on balance or emotionally. For instance, Mahler 6 was difficult for me. The last moment and all this content, it's very emotional.
When traveling abroad to conduct, what item could you not leave home without?
Yeah, it's a funny question in my case. Of course, let's put apart all the technological items. Of course, I don't mention the phone. Of course, the iPad has become a very nice tool for musicians. But you know, since I very first left Venezuela when I was 19 years old, I keep traveling with this blue case, where inside I have some cards, presentation cards, pictures, some papers, some little souvenirs, or some gift, or some my mother, you know, she offered me some religious cards or something, and I have this. I have never left home for a travel without that little blue case where I have this. And I don't know why, but sometimes it's unconscious, but it is always on my back, always on my suitcase, traveling with me since I first left Venezuela when I was 19 years old. And actually the blue case belongs to a travel agency, Caracas, that doesn't exist anymore since 15 years. So and I never changed it.
Right.
And it's so yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Brilliant answer. What is the one thing you would change about being a conductor?
Well, the only thing about this fantastic job I find difficult, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who answered this to you, is the traveling.
Mm.
And being away from your loved ones so often.
Yes.
And this is the difficult thing.
Mm.
That if would be a way to change it, I would do it. Other thing I would change is high podiums. Sometimes the podiums are too high, and I'm already too high.
I don't know how tall you are, but I'm in old money. I'm about 6 feet tall, and I once worked with a famous British violinist. I shall save her blushes. First time we met was with a youth orchestra, and I stood on the podium, and she came out to play in the dress rehearsal, and she said, "Right, either you get me a higher podium than you, or you get down off that box." Because there was about 9 feet difference between where she was stood and where I was stood. Sometimes it can be quite frightening, can it? Stood on a high podium, especially if they're small and you've got nowhere to relax into.
Yeah. So I don't like high podiums, so it's enough. But Michael, is the traveling is the most painful. It's difficult. It's difficult.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
That is also easy for me to answer because I actually studied 2 years. I was a student at the medicine school in Venezuela.
Ah.
I finished very early my secondary school very early. I was 16 years old. That's quite early in Venezuela. You finish when you're 17 or 18, going to 18. I finished 16, going to 17. A little bit immature, and I want to do everything in life. And apart from violin and music, I went to medicine. And I remember the medicine school in Venezuela. There are two in Caracas. One of them is in front of the Aula Magna. Aula Magna is one of the most beautiful concert halls we have in Caracas that belongs to the university. And I used to escape from the lessons with my violin to study violin and practice scales and back sonatas and partitas in the corridors of the Aula Magna. But with that rhythm, I even almost made it to finish 2 years of medicine school.
Yeah.
So I guess if I would not be a musician today, I will be a doctor somewhere.
If the world were to end tonight, what would be your choice of final meal and drink?
So that's very easy also. I tell you why after. So, spaghetti alle vongole. This is my favorite dish ever. With a beautiful white one from Puglia, probably, or Tuscany. And then before that, I will start with a beautiful mozzarella of the area of Campania, of Napoli, around Napoli, a fresh bufala. And I will go on with the vongole, and I will finish with fantastic tiramisu, probably, with a limoncello and Italian coffee. And I tell you, it's easy to answer because in the last 3 weeks, I think I was eating that so often. It's absolutely my favorite dish ever, spaghetti alle vongole.
Well, I can tell you now that you've just listed two of my youngest daughter, May, two of her favorite dishes ever, the spaghetti alla vongole and also the tiramisu. So put it this way, I think you've done a wonderful choice, and wonderful it's been to talk to you for the last hour or so. Had a really good time, and I hope to see you very soon, hopefully when you're in Liverpool and started, and I'll come up and see a concert.
Great, Michael. You are not so far, so I'm also very much looking forward to meeting you very soon.
A Mic on the Podium was devised and produced by Michael Seal, with music by Ben Dawson. Next time, I talk to an English conductor who, like Martin Brabbins, won the Leeds International Conducting Competition, studied with Ilya Musin, and went on to become music director of English National Opera. As well as a very successful career conducting all over the world, since 2013 she has been head of conducting at the Royal Academy of Music. Until then, bye bye!